Philip, the release of these students came as Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader who was ousted in that coup, was meant to have a court hearing today, but that was postponed again. Tell us about these latest developments.
Yes, Aung San Suu Kyi, as you say, and this is the leader of the National League for Democracy, the party that won a second successive landslide victory in the November elections. Was overthrown on February the 1st within hours of the new MPs due to sit in Parliament. She was due to be in court today, and we were expecting some very serious charges to be levelled against her. There have been accusations made on television in recent days from two people who've been put in front of a television monitor and apparently sort of read from scripts or had scripts read for them, alleging that she received hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and gold and gifts from them. So those charges were expected to be formalized today in corruption charges, those accusations, I should say. But her court case was postponed for a second successive hearing because there was no internet connection. No, she is in detention somewhere. We don't know where. She hasn't been seen since February the 1st, even by her lawyers. But she would have been expected to appear before the court by a video link. The military has taken down the internet or restricted internet access to try and prevent protesters communicating. As a result, they weren't able to hold their own hearing into the allegations against her. Now, this did come as there were hundreds of detainees released. This is definitely great news for those young people, primarily students or younger people who've been involved in the protests. But the junta is still holding senior politicians. An estimated 1,500 people are still in detention, rounded up since the coup. So it's some good news. But for the opposition, their main leaders, many of their main leaders, are still in prison.
Philip, the crackdown and the violence there is still ongoing, as it has been since early February. But people today decided to hold something different, a silent strike, a stay-at-home strike. Is that change in tactic just a way to try and save lives?
Well, the crackdown has become increasingly violent, and the opposition have a number of sort of strands to the way they're sort of fighting junta rule. One of them is the protest on the street, and the simple fact is that with so many deaths, with sniper shots to heads and necks, there undoubtedly has been a sort of reduction of the crowds who've been willing to take to the streets. And so the silent strike today was indeed partly sort of saying, you may have the guns, you may have the might, but we are still protesting. And so people were urged to stay at home, not to shop. The shops themselves are closed. There are pictures from across Myanmar of ghost towns, apparently, and that really was quite an effective, if symbolic, strike. This comes just a few hours, after a 7-year-old girl was shot dead when security forces burst into the house of a family in Mandalay looking for potential suspects. She was sitting in her father's lap. He was arguing with the military. They shot at him. They killed her. That really reinforced the sort of dangers of opposing them. But what is still going on is the civil disobedience movement, the strikes, the civil service, the private sector workers who are refusing to work under this junta and aiming to make the rule ungovernable for the generals. So, there may not have been the same sort of crowds on the streets. In fact, they made a virtue of having nobody on the streets today. But the groundswell, the momentum of these protests is still strong.
Philip, thank you for that. Philip Sherwell there reporting from Bangkok.